Hey guys, so welcome back to the Rach Active podcast. My name is Rach J. I am your host. I'm a coach and the founder of Core 30. I'm really excited to welcome our awesome guest to the show today. He is a strength and conditioning coach. He's the PT over at Keep It Cleaner. Now, if you guys don't know what that is, it's a health and fitness app started by Steph Claire Smith and Laura Henshaw. And he's also the host of his own podcast, the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. Welcome, Mr. Danny Kennedy.
Thanks for having me on, Rach. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get you on. And obviously we're filming this, or we're recording this during COVID. So it's a bit of a strange time right now. And I feel like it's affected all of our lives in a really profound way. So, how are you going with everything? How's your mental state, your emotional state, all of that jazz?
Yeah, definitely strange times. I mean, just before we press record, we were just talking about the fact that I'm recording in the backseat of my car, which is quite bizarre, especially every time someone walks past. But things have been okay. Look, obviously had to adapt quite a bit in regards to what I do on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the foundations are still the same. Like, I'm still training people. I'm still trying to just deliver as much value as I can. It's the way I do it has just had to change. So pretty much since week one of the restrictions here in Victoria or in Melbourne, I've been training my clients outdoors, which, I hate winter at the best of times. So being outside for the whole of winter is not something that I would necessarily do quite often, but it's been all right. And then obviously now in stage 4, things have tightened up again, so I can't do any PT. So I'm just kind of doubling down on the online stuff, whether it be the podcast, sending out stuff to my email list, just trying to build out more platforms. So once we can go back into the gym and have stuff prepared and just put the extra time that I probably wouldn't usually have to good use, and then not get too caught up in all of this stuff because I don't have any control over any of it. So, I mean, wasting time, complaining about it or wishing that it wasn't the case it's exactly that. It's a waste of time. So I've been pretty big on trying to stay really positive throughout the whole process and do what I can to help others stay positive as well. Yeah. And, I'm the first to admit, like, a lot of this stuff is frustrating and I do spend a little bit of time thinking about it, but also, like, as I said, there's just nothing I can do. So we may as well just move on, focus on what we can control. And we're still very lucky. I mean, although we have to, when you think about it, when you put it into perspective, we have to stay home and not go to work. We can only hang out with people that we're really close with. and the one thing we're allowed to do is exercise. So, I mean, it's not that bad, is it?
No, but, I feel like we've got the essentials down.
There are a lot of people out there. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that have been affected in a big way, more so than me. And some people have barely been affected at all. But in the end of the day, shit happens and you've just got to move on and focus on what you can control.
Yeah, and I really like that you touched on that too, because I feel like that's one of the things that, I love about your approach to health and fitness. Like I've said to you before, it's pretty no bullshit approach. And I feel that, you mentioned focusing on stuff that we can control and I feel like that's one of the ways that we can really, navigate our mindset and motivation during this period of time. Because I feel like, I don't know if you, with your clients online, that you're finding that they kind of struggling with motivation and mindset and trying to wrap their heads around what's going on and then also then getting themselves to train like how they would normally, you know what I mean?
I think it's gone in a couple of waves. The first wave was, frustration, anxiety, and the unknown of like what was going to happen, how long it was going to last. Obviously you can't go to the gym anymore. You may not have much equipment at home. Usually you train with a friend or you train in groups. Now you don't have the motivation to train and then, the stress of other shit as well. Like you may have your job, you may have lost your job, your hours might have reduced, you're not able to go and do the stuff you would usually like doing. So there's all that initially. And I think we all moved past that quite quickly, really, like to the point where everyone had adapted. Probably more people were exercising than what they usually would. People had found ways to work around it and had understood that you did have to adapt. And then the second wave is, I think what's been harder for most people is almost having a bit of a tease of going back to semi-normal and then now being pulled all the way back into being even more restricted than what we were in the first place. So you kind of had like this low and then people built themselves back up. And then now a lot of people have dropped all the way down because they're just like, well, when is this going to end? Now I can't do anything. So I understand that. But again, it just comes back to what I said before. It's just a matter of adapting and finding different ways to achieve the same goal. There's plenty of ways to skin a cat or whatever the hell that saying is, but you just have to adapt. And if you don't, then you're going to get left behind. I think the people that are going to do exceptionally well, business-wise, health and fitness-wise, and then also just mentally in this period are those that are willing to just accept it, move on, find new ways to achieve the same goals, and then just go from there.
Yeah. And you're really great at talking about goal setting and daily habits. That's something that I think that you incorporate into your work with your clients as well. So can you kind of talk us through like what you've done in terms of your own goal setting and working a routine into your daily life? Because I think that really helps, especially when we're going through this period of uncertainty. We don't have the same structure that we used to. So we kind of have to create that for ourselves, right? To keep our minds focused on moving forward. So kind of, what have you been doing?
Yeah, I think structure is probably the most important thing, and routine. So obviously our routines have changed quite a bit. Most people have anyway. Like a lot of people wouldn't typically work from home and all that type of stuff. So it was just a matter, at the start for me, it was a matter of looking at how I was able to still achieve the same outcome, doing it in a different way, and then breaking up my days and my weeks into some form of structure and routine. Even the first, and the initial stages of lockdown, I just had a shoulder reconstruction. So I couldn't train. Obviously working was pretty limited as well. So everything kind of changed really quickly. So there was not much, I had no routine or structure for a week or two, and my headspace, my mental health was shit ass for a week or two.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, now I need to get out of this little rut. And to do that, I'm going to need to set some goals. They're going to be different than what they usually are. I've got to come up with some structure and routine. Even if I'm going to be home from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, there's still ways to break up your day into routine. Have your morning routine, have your meal, time out when you're going to have your breakfast, lunch and dinner, whatever it is. You might separate a certain amount of time to do some emails, and you've got your time to exercise. So just still having structure in your day. Otherwise it all just becomes one big blur. Yeah. And then before you know it, the whole week's gone and you've achieved nothing. And I think for me anyway, I feel my mental health and stuff is just so much better, and I feel so much more positive when I'm productive.
Yeah, me too.
So if I'm productive and I'm getting stuff done, even if it's just stuff that's not really that important, even if it's just shit around the house or just normal stuff that needs to be done, if I'm ticking that off and I can see that I'm working my way through a list and I'm following a bit of a structure, I just feel so much better. So that was really big for me. And then my morning routine.
Talk us through that, because you've talked about that before. Yeah,
the morning routine is really important for me. So first thing when I wake up in the morning, I'll do a cold shower. And I mean, it's the cold shower thing's not every single morning. I'm not going to say it is, but it could be. If I don't do it in the morning, I'll do it later in the day. I think the cold shower for me is just an important thing now. Cold shower, I then do roughly 10 minutes of meditation. And then after that, I'll go through and do a bit of a journal. So I do some kind of set intentions and do some clarity stuff each day and then some small goal setting for the day. So I'll write down some small goals. Again, it could be really simple. It could be drink 4 liters of water, or it could be pay this bill that's due today, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be make sure that you're on time for this podcast. It doesn't matter what it is, but you set these small goals that you revisit at night and either tick off or put a cross next to them, which builds up momentum and discipline. And then I do a gratitude list.
Love that.
And then I'm out the door. So that's my morning routine. It sounds like it's a lot, but it doesn't take that long to get through. And that's how I start my day every day. And again, that just, as I touched on before with the productivity thing, when I leave the house, if I've done all that, I haven't actually really done anything for the day, but I leave the house feeling like I'm already on top of things. I feel like I can then go about my day without having kind of extra baggage of worrying about things that I haven't done or just kind of guessing my way through the day. So setting intentions and seeking a bit of clarity around what exactly I want to achieve out of the day for me is an important one.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like our morning routine is very similar. I don't do the cold shower thing, but I definitely do the gratitude and the intentions. And it makes you feel so accomplished. Like, you know what you're going to do for the day. You can tick off that list, and then you can move on to the next day knowing that you've, achieved. And like you said, it just builds momentum. So it just rolls through, as you go through the weeks, particularly during this period of time as well, when you don't have any other structure.
Yeah, the flow-on effect is big, I think. And even outside of productivity, just like being a decent person. I think like when you leave the house and you've done your gratitude and your meditation and your goals, your headspace is quite good. So you go and I'll go and spend the morning with clients and my headspace is good. Like I feel like I'm able to help them achieve their goals. Like I'm in a good mood, blah, blah, blah. Whereas the opposite, you get up and you might have slept through your alarm a little bit. You don't have a good breakfast. You do no meditation. You have no idea what you want to achieve for the day and you're just rolling out and everything's kind of like falling behind. I just noticed the difference. Like there's certain things that I'll like make sure I have to do every morning. Like some days if I'm running late or if I have other shit to do, I may not do my meditation before I leave the house, but I'll make sure I get it done at some point throughout the day. But like the gratitude and goal setting stuff, I try and make sure that that's done every day. And then now I've added in an evening one as well. So I'll revisit a lot of stuff and there's a list of questions that I'll kind of answer at the end of each day. Just so you're aware of, again, I think it's just about self-awareness. It's about 100%. Understanding about, whether or not each week is just the same shit and you're wondering why you're not achieving your goals, but you're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Or it's also just making yourself being more conscious of exactly what you want to achieve. Because if you don't have any clarity around what you want to do or how you want to behave or how you want others to feel because of you or how you want to feel because of others, blah, 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 then you can't have any expectations because you haven't set any. So, so I think that's the one at nighttime. I think has been quite good as well. I've only started doing that in the last month or two.
Yeah, that one I do as well. Right at nighttime, so journal at nighttime to reflect basically on everything that's gone on during the day or any things that have come up, and then you can kind of readjust the direction that you want to take, and then you move that to the next day. So it's a kind of just like a full circle kind of process, isn't it? Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like we have similar approaches, which is really nice. So
that's awesome.
I've been doing a bit of reflecting with some of my guests about the last time we saw each other in person. So I was thinking about you and I, and we probably haven't seen each other since last year, 2019, I would say. And that would have been probably at MSAC, I would imagine.
At MSAC, yeah.
Yeah.
I know, it's been quite some time, yeah.
Yeah. Are you still training, well, when it was open, were you still training clients out at MSAC?
Yeah, still at MSAC.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine being back in there anytime in the near future.
No,
but,
it might be close for a while.
Shouldn't say that. Hopefully we are back in there very soon. But yeah, that's where I'm training majority of my clients now.
Yeah, so I was seeing Dan. I think I was doing a bit of ambassador work, I think, for MSAC. So I'd be there quite often on the gym floor, and I'd just see you with your clients, which I feel like is really cool because, sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect between, obviously you're really well known in the health and fitness space. People know you from socials and from Keep It Cleaner. So there sometimes is a bit of a disconnect between your social media identity and then the actual grind, like the daily grind of what your job is. So it was really cool for me to see and really connect the two, I guess, because obviously I'd known who you were. But also seeing that you're really passionate about helping your clients, that really comes through. And then, when you were on break in between clients, you'd duck out to I think it was the high performance studio or where the athletes train or whatever, and you'd set up your laptop and then be working on your podcast. So that was a really cool thing to see that it kind of all meshes together and you've got that passion. It comes through your work, But I actually don't know your story when it comes to getting into the fitness space. So can you kind of talk us through that part? Because I don't really know how you came to fitness.
Yeah. Firstly, I think what you're saying before about, I guess, almost perception versus reality, as people often state it, that is the case. I mean, it's easy to look at, I think you can go both ways. You can look at social media and see someone's life for what it is on social media. And then in real life, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
It literally is just perception. It's just like them portraying how they want people to see them, but it's not like that at all. Whereas like I see it with and people often say similar stuff to what you said. Like they see the shit that I do on social media and then if they see me in person, or like, or if they watch my stories and I upload like a day's worth of shit, and then it's like, surely that's not all from like one day. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, for me, like the social media is such a great way to reach like more people and to help more people and provide value. But it's always like, it's always going to be second to like what my main priority is. And that's like mastering my craft of helping people improve their life through health and fitness. So it's just a vehicle to be able to show to do that. So, I mean, like, I think the opposite that is quite common as well, where people live for social media, but then outside of that, like, they're just pretending. Like, they're not really doing the work. They're hoping, they're expecting things to do extremely well just because of how they're perceived on social media, but they're not doing anything, they're not doing the work in the background. Like, so, you know, even with my social media, it's nowhere near as large of an audience as what I would like it to be. But considering where it is now from when it started, like, I started my fitness page on Instagram in 2000, like, I think it was maybe December 2013. And like, without fail, I've put up content pretty much literally every single day. That's like with the purpose of trying to help people every single day since 2013. We're like midway through 2020 now. So like, when you tell people that, and then because it's easy to look at my Instagram or podcast now and go, like, how did you grow it to that? Or I'd love to be able to be in that position there. But I'm like, well, you probably wouldn't love to be posting shit every single day since 2013, or you probably wouldn't want to do, you know, even with the podcast, my first probably 100 episodes, I think, or something like that. Maybe the first year and a half, I was getting like a maximum of maybe, what was it? I think I got to the point where it was at around 500 downloads an episode. And like, that was, for me at the time, that was good, but then it just plateaued. It barely grew at all. And like, I've put out an episode a week at least since I started my show. So like, you go in months where the numbers are staying exactly the same. So unless you're actually passionate about what you're doing, it's easy to then give up. Like, for me, I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep doing it. Hopefully, eventually it gains some traction. And when it does, now I've got all these episodes for people to go back and check out. So there was weeks, like I said, where it was just like same numbers every week. I'm like, fuck, what am I doing this for? It's like, it's not really improving. It's not going anywhere near I want it to. But then now, I'm so glad I did that, because now the numbers go up. Now people can, you know, if someone hears a show for the first time today, they go back through and there's like 200 episodes to go through. So
you're just an excellent example of someone who is like practicing what they preach, essentially, and also consistent action, which is what it takes to achieve any goal, essentially, in any area of your life. You can't just kind of like do it once or do it twice and then expect all these results to happen. It's like consistent action over time. You just keep going and going and going, which is exactly what you've basically done, you know, with your socials, with your podcast and everything.
Yeah, so that was like the first part of that question. The second part, so I grew up in country Victoria, in Horsham, and then I'd always played footy and basketball. And I first went into the gym, I think I was about 16 or maybe 15 years old, and I went in there initially because one of my basketball coaches said I needed to put on some size because I was just so skinny. Like when I'll get to that actually. But yeah, so I was real skinny, went to the gym, hated it initially. I was like really big on cardio. Like I obviously love basketball and footy. And then I could just run in my sleep. Like I loved it. So the gym, like I didn't really like it that much. And then I got pretty hooked on it like quite quickly once I started to see results. And then it was like an obsession. Like I was obsessed with anything to do with training, nutrition, all that type of stuff. I was constantly in the gym. And then in year 12, I decided to do my PT qualification separate to year 12, like just online over the span of 12 months, just in case, because my intention, like I was set on playing basketball for a living. Like that was, nothing else mattered. Like, yeah, I applied for university for exercise and sports science, and I got in at Deakin in Geelong, and then I was going to defer that for a year anyway. And then I'd actually just made the decision to quit basketball and focus on footy, which at the time was like a massive decision. Yeah. And then within like a week, I got asked to move to Melbourne for basketball and flipped the decision. And within a week, I was living in Melbourne for basketball to like pretty much full time for 2 years in Melbourne. So moved to Melbourne, did basketball for 2 years, didn't really work that much. I was just doing some gym shifts at MSAC, just not doing much at all really, to be honest, just walking around and talking to people. And then end of 2013, I had an ankle reconstruction. And then, so that was pretty shattering. Like I was pretty devastated about that, but it ended up being like the biggest blessing, because that's when I started work full-time as a PT. Just fell in love with that and didn't miss basketball as much as what I thought I would. And then, yeah, like the rest is history, I guess. It started from there, and then it's just built from there.
It's so funny how like these things kind of happen in your life where I feel like, I guess you never plan for them, like what's happening right now with COVID. Like things just happen. There's things that happen out of your control, and I guess it's what you do, how you respond to those things that kind of really make the difference. And you can create something really awesome and move in this, great direction, because you're doing so well in this space. So it's obviously, what you're meant to do, and everyone else like us, we get the value from that, which is amazing. So one of the things that, as a strength and conditioning coach, I know you like to talk about these a lot, like misconceptions around, I guess, building muscle and all, especially for females. I definitely know that, my area of expertise is Pilates. So I definitely hear it a lot that, I want to kind of get lean muscle or lean down, but I don't want to build, I don't want to bulk. That's definitely something that I hear a lot. So can you kind of go through some of the biggest misconceptions that you have heard around training and nutrition? Because I feel like, there's quite a few that you can kind of debunk. Yeah.
So there is plenty of misconceptions. And the first one is quite often, I often hear girls in particular say they don't want to lift weights because they don't want to get big and bulky. I mean, that's the most common one. So the best way for me to answer that is that, like, if it was that easy, I'd be fucking huge. Like, I train in the gym like 5-6 days a week, every single day since I was like 15, 16. So, I mean, like, I guess the best way for me to explain to people is like just explaining like how it all actually works, like the fundamentals of how nutrition and training work. Like, to build lean muscle mass, you ideally need to be eating in a calorie surplus, meaning that you are eating more than you are burning. So you over time, like consistently, and you are overloading a muscle enough for it to need to grow. So you need to be giving it a reason to grow. Now, even if you're training in the right way, training in a way where you are overloading, which I would recommend everybody be doing, because everybody should be trying to build lean muscle tissue. The only way that you're going to gain weight and put on a lot of size and get big and like bulky is if you're eating too much. I mean, it's not as simple as people think. Like, you don't just pick up a weight and then all of a sudden you're massive. It just doesn't work like that. So it'd be fantastic. But
it's so good.
But it just doesn't work like that. So, and then in terms of nutrition, and even with training, like coming back to training, like cardio for me is something that a lot of people, there's this big misconception about what cardio does and like the result of cardio. So, to lose body fat and to have a lean physique, you need to be the opposite of a surplus. You need to be in a calorie deficit. So expending more energy than you're taking in. Now, that energy expenditure can come from anything. It can come from Pilates. It can come from strength training. It can come from cardio. And it can come from a mix of things. And that's what I would usually recommend is, obviously I'm a big advocate for strength and resistance training. I think it's really important and there's so many benefits. Things like Pilates and yoga I'm a big fan of as well. And then when you talk about cardio, like I personally like cardio. Like I run more. Like I do more cardio when I'm not trying to lose fat than what I do when I am trying to lose fat, because I just enjoy it. But when it comes to losing body fat, I try and teach people to think of it as a tool. Like it's just a tool in your tool belt. So to increase your energy expenditure. So by me doing cardio 5-6 days a week, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to lose body fat. It's just it's not an automatic answer to fat loss, because if I'm still eating too much or my overall energy expenditure is not enough and I'm not burning more than I'm taking in, I'm not going to lose fat, regardless of how much cardio I do. Whereas if I'm only, the leanest I've ever been in my life, I did no cardio. Like when I used to do physique competing for a little bit, and I did a 25 or 26 week prep for one of my shows, and I just lifted weights like 5 to 6 days a week, and that was it. I was like really strict with my nutrition, not so much about like what I was eating, but strict with the amounts I was eating. I focused on trying to stay as strong as possible in the gym. I expended most of my energy from lifting weights and resistance training and high intensity resistance training. And then I got as lean as I ever had been in my whole entire life with no cardio at all.
Yeah.
So that's a big misconception, is that, when you're trying to lose body fat, you just need to start doing all this crazy amounts of training, which is just not necessary. I tell people, when they're trying to lose fat, start with as little amount of training as possible and as high amount of calories as possible. So then you've got room to move. Because if you start heap of training and no calories, you dig yourself a big hole and you're just stuck. Yeah. And it's really hard to get out of that position. It creates a really unhealthy relationship with food. You don't enjoy training and it's not sustainable. So I'm all about sustainability. So they're probably like the two bigger misconceptions. But, the strength training side of things, particularly for females, is something that I really enjoy teaching, because it's really cool to be able to help people understand what it actually does.
Yeah.
Like, you talk to a lot of girls, they want to look lean, they want nice glutes, they want to have the abs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any lean muscle mass there, it doesn't matter how much fat you lose, you have no shape. You don't have any definition or tone. Like a defined or toned muscle, there's no such thing. Like the only thing you can do to a muscle is either increase its size or decrease its size. Yeah. That's all muscles can do. Yeah. So to create the illusion of definition or tone, it's just about having muscle mass there. So building the lean muscle tissue with resistance training and reducing your body fat percentage enough that you can reveal the shape. So I could have like the biggest biceps in the world, but if I've got a heap of body fat, they're going to look shit.
Yeah.
Whereas I could have like mediocre biceps and reduce and like start to build up the size of my biceps enough to the point where I've built them a bit, and then reduce my body fat and they look way better. So, a saying that I say a little bit is that like the best way, or I didn't make it up, I'm not even going to try and claim it, but the best way to look like you've gained, I think the actual saying is in pounds. Say the best way to look like you've gained 10 pounds of muscle is to lose 10 pounds of fat.
Yeah.
Because when I'm like as lean as I possibly can be, my body weight's actually quite low. My muscle mass is probably lower than what it is at the moment, but I look 10 times better. Whereas it's important to have that muscle mass there, because if you just focus on losing weight and not losing fat, or at least not retaining muscle mass, then you're just not it's going to be a disappointing result. But yeah, there's a few of the misconceptions there. And then the last one I'll add in is supplements. So like using like a protein supplement, like a protein powder the benefit of a protein powder is that it's convenient. And it's most likely, if you're buying a good brand, it's most likely a high quality protein source, but it's not going to do anything different than what eating, chicken or tofu or eggs or steak will do for you. It's still protein. So you don't just have a shake and then all of a sudden, again, like your muscles just grow or you just lose fat. They will, like supplement companies brand their products to make you think that that's what they do, but it's not. It's just a convenient way to get protein in. So I recommend almost everybody uses a protein supplement, like a high quality protein supplement, because it's hard to get in the right amount there, enough protein just from food most of the time. So it's convenient for me to have a protein shake after I train because I don't feel like eating, or I might have another client, so I don't have time to sit down and eat. And if I'm not doing it, then at the end of the day, I'm nowhere near my protein goal for the day. And ideally, you want to be, that's one of the numbers you should be trying to reach with your nutrition anyway. So that's probably another misconception, is that supplements do more than what people think they really do.
Yeah, because when it comes down to the fundamentals of nutrition, I think you and I both, I'm a nutrition coach too. So with my clients, the goal is usually they come in to say, I want to lose weight and tone up, basically, which is essentially what you said, is being in a calorie deficit and also, increasing your lean muscle mass. So, in terms of macros, they want to understand, because another thing that I think you have is making sure that you hit your protein macro numbers, right? Yeah. So it's calorie deficit and then your protein number, basically. And I know for me, like, I'm not opposed to protein supplements either, just to basically get that protein in, because sometimes it is hard to eat so much, if you don't want to eat that much chicken or whatever it is, just to get it down.
Particularly with females, it's very common that, like, when I start working with someone on their nutrition, they're just nowhere near their protein intake, like not even close. And that's what most females find it hard to do initially, is reach the certain amount of protein they should be having. Like, everyone has a different opinion, but like I usually recommend 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight as a benchmark type of thing. So for those that haven't really ever put any focus on how much protein they're having, it's quite a shock when they realize that like how much they actually need to be having. And like the difference it actually makes in the fact that they're not hungry all the time anymore and that they're recovering a lot better between sessions and they're able to metabolize fat better. So, that's
it all
I think
plays
it's an
into
important
it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, eating for fat, there's also different, I guess, goals, because that's the thing that I think people get really confused about. If you don't understand what your actual goals are, all the nutrition advice can be really confusing, right? So it's contextual. You need to understand what's your goal. Are you wanting to drop body fat? Are you wanting to maintain? Are you wanting to perform well in the gym? Are you wanting to build lean muscle? Because obviously there's different approaches to all the different things. So I mean, and one thing that I try to balance myself just in my own stuff is being able to maintain a really lean physique, but then also eating to perform in the gym, because they're kind of two different things. So what's your kind of take on that? Because I don't know if you can do both at the same time in terms of leaning down. You might go through like a mini shred or something like that, but then, eat to perform. So what's your take?
Well, when it comes to body composition, I think it's important. You do have to, for most people, you need to choose a goal. Like with the exception of people that are just starting, those that are significantly overweight or those that are using steroids, anabolic steroids, most people can't build a significant amount of muscle mass and lose a significant amount of body fat at the same time. Yet, unfortunately, that's what everybody's goal is. Everyone wants to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. So that's why people don't see results, is because it's counterproductive to what they're trying to do. They're eating next to nothing. They're trying to train to build muscle or whatever, but they're just not really going anywhere because they're trying to do two things at the same time. So I'd usually recommend focus on one before the other. But in terms of like training performance, like couple of things that I've learned throughout like the contest preps that I did for these physique shows was that, particularly the last one, I put a huge, I don't think there's a huge importance in terms of body composition with nutrient timing. I think protein distribution throughout the day is important for muscle protein synthesis. But, when you have your carbohydrates or when you have your fats, I mean, it's largely irrelevant for most people. I mean, for most people that are worried about it, that's the least of their worries. They should be focusing on other things first. But in terms of performance and muscle retention, I found it really beneficial the last time I did a significant cut where I was trying to get as lean as possible to really focus on carbohydrate timing around my workout. So I was having huge carbohydrate breakfast because I was training mid-morning pretty much every day. So I'd have a huge carbohydrate breakfast. I would then have fast-acting carbohydrates before I train, while I was training, and then after I trained. So and my training performance, my muscle retention was significantly better than what it ever had been before because I was still training really well. My strength stayed a lot higher in the gym compared to what I had to previously. And my energy levels were better in the first half of the day, which is when I needed them most. So I think in that respect, you can do both at the same time. But yeah, in body composition, it's very tough to do two of those things at the exact same time. And I just wouldn't recommend it. I mean, if you're trying to lose body fat, you can definitely still gain a little bit of muscle mass, but it's very small compared to what you're expecting it to be. And then, likewise, if you built the muscle mass and you want to lose body fat, a lot of people lose a shitload of muscle mass when they're losing body fat because they're just not eating anywhere near enough. They go from lifting heavy weight to all of a sudden doing thousands of reps with light weights. So if you're not using it, you will lose it. So if you're trying to lose body fat, focus on training performance and you will retain muscle mass while you lose the body fat. But it's very, very hard to be building significant amounts of muscle while you're losing body fat. Unless, like I said, you're brand new to training, you're significantly overweight, or you're using anabolics.
Yeah, so it's really important to know what your goals are for those of you who are listening, because I do feel like it's so contextual, and that's what makes it confusing. If you don't understand what your goals are and are not clear about what your goals are, then that's when it can get really, really like, I don't understand. This person's telling me this, and this is so. That's what it is. It's finding the context and understanding what your goals are. So I feel like fitness is a really great space to learn about growth, to learn about failing, because obviously, you know, with progressive overload and stuff like that, you have, like you were saying, you have to give your muscle a reason to want to grow. You have to put it into a state of, I guess, being uncomfortable, which is, you know, you can take that into any area of life, essentially. Like there's not going to be any growth without you going through a period of being uncomfortable. And along the way, like, you know, you can fail, you can fuck up, you can have fears around that, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of like to, you know, bring it into a broader perspective of talking about failures and things, because, you know, even in your business, in life, I'm sure that you've gone through many failures and rejections and whatnot, and things that I think you've spoken about this too on your podcast. So, you know, what's been your biggest failure in life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I typically find that like a lot of my resilience now and a lot of like my work ethic now and a lot of my not giving a fuck about failing and not caring about whether people say no or not caring about rejection or whether things don't work out and stuff like that, which is what holds a lot of people back. Like I really don't suffer that much from that now because I suffered so much of it earlier. Like particularly when not even so much in business. Like I'm not going to say lucky because I've worked really hard, but been quite lucky in business to not go through like heaps and heaps of failures, like touch wood. But in saying that, there's small failures every single day. Like even with my online coaching and stuff, I did everything myself and I still do. Like in terms of communication, like email, social media, even like editing and uploading podcasts, YouTube, all that shit. I do all that stuff myself, which I always will do because I think like I enjoy it. And also with the coaching side of things, like people are paying to do coaching with me, not for someone else to be just sending out shit or to be automated or to get the same program, you know, you to get the same program I've just sent to someone else. So I do all that myself, but there's certain things that I early days would try and do myself and just waste so much time. So things like websites and stuff like that. Like I would try and do a lot of that stuff myself. It'd stuff up. I'd waste a heap of time on it, waste a heap of money instead of just spending a bit at the start and letting someone else do it. So you learn a heap of shit like that. But in terms of like failures, like particularly with sport, like missing out on teams constantly, you know, injuries. I've had so many injuries, setbacks with training and stuff like that, which has been really disappointing. But yeah, particularly with sport, like missing out on a lot of teams, never being like, you know, the typical cliche shit, like never being the first picked or losing a lot of games, just all that type of stuff early on. Like I got smashed with that type of shit. And it never, for whatever reason, I don't know why, it never fazed me. Like no matter how many times I failed, no matter how many times I got cut, no matter how many times I missed out on stuff, I would turn up day after day with the idea of thinking that one day I would still make it and one day things would go the opposite way. And then, and that just became a habit. And then, so once I stopped playing basketball, I've just used that same mentality, that same work ethic, that same mindset with everything I've done, whether it be business, whether it be my own health and fitness, literally everything I've done is around that. It's just like knowing that if something needs to be done, like I need to put in the work to do it. If it doesn't work this time, it will eventually. If it doesn't happen, it wasn't meant to be. It is what it is. But the only thing that I can control is how much, you know, my work ethic, the work I put in and the effort that I put in. And then the rest is what it is.
Yeah. And I feel like that in itself, just having that mentality and approach to life is essentially just that you can control what you can control. And then if it doesn't kind of work out for whatever reason, something out of your control happens, that's the thing that you can do is respond. You can respond in the way that you know best to. So it's such a great, I feel like fitness and sport is such a great way of learning these kind of lessons, you know. Are there any other kind of things that you've learnt from fitness or from movement yourself that you feel like you've been able to take into other areas of your life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the biggest one is just focusing on what you can control. That's a big one. But also that you do need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if you're not giving your body a reason to change, it won't. If you're not doing things that you haven't done before or doing the uncomfortable things and the things that are hard, then things won't get much better. Things won't change that much. If you stay in your comfort, like the best shit happens outside of your comfort zone without fail. And then like that. And then the other thing, like not so much, even from sport and from business, one of the other things I've learned is that if you don't ask, you'll never know. Like, you just have to ask. You have to be willing to fail or get rejected 10 times out of 10. Otherwise, you'll never know. Like, there's so many things that have happened with my work and sporting, everything, that if I had have been worried about that, then I would not be in like the position that I'm in now. And there would have been a lot of things that just hadn't have happened if I hadn't have just asked or just put myself out there.
Yeah. And I think it's, it's one of those things that people have to cultivate. It's like a courage to be able to put yourself out there, be able to, I guess be vulnerable in a sense of, you may get a no, but I mean, what's the worst that can happen, really? You get a no.
Like, I've said this on a number of podcasts, and I've said on mine a heap of times. Like, the best way I can explain this to people is that if you're not doing something because of the fear of failure, fear of someone saying no, or fear of rejection, the best way to think of it is that you are already in that position. Like, if you wanted to do this podcast with me today and you didn't ask because you're worried I would say no, which I wouldn't, but like, if you were worried about that, then it's already reality, because we still haven't done the fucking podcast. So, whereas if you ask, which you did, now we're doing the podcast. So like, that's a basic example, but it's so true. Like, if you don't ask, or if you're fearing failure, then you have already failed, because you're in the exact same position as you will be, even if it does fail. So best case scenario, it happens. Worst case scenario, same shit, you're already in it.
Yeah, that's a great story, actually. I really like that example. So thanks so much for chatting with me, Dan, because I feel like it's been so great to touch on all these awesome topics. And I think you're just one of those awesome examples of someone who practices what they preach and a real, like, kind of true leader in this health and fitness space. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
I appreciate the kind words. And thanks again for having me on. It's been fun.
No worries. And so you can find Dan on IG at DJK Fitness, also at his website, DannyKennedyFitness.com. And he's also got his own podcast, the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast, and you can find that wherever you get your podcast, guys. So make sure you screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories, tag Dan, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Rach Active Podcast, guys.